Hi, my name is Nathan Michael Scrimmins. I am here today with my grandpa. His name is John B. Effinger. I am doing a documentary on his life. He was a war veteran. He was a part of the Navy, and he's going to tell us all about his life. Okay. Tell me about your early childhood and where you lived.
I lived in the orphanage. I was brought there when I was about 2 years old. My sister and I were there because our parents had died. And I guess it was the best place to put us because none of our relatives could take care of us. So we lived there from about age 2 on till I was about 13. It was pretty disciplined life up there. You want me to go on?
Yeah.
All right.
Also, who were your parents?
My parents, my mother's name was Loretta Daly Effinger. My father was John B. Effinger. My sister's name was Loretta, and I am John B. Effinger. Life in the orphanage was kind of tough. Everything was about the same time every day. It was very disciplined, and we had an average of 20 to 40 boys and probably the same number of girls. We lived separately and ate separately, but we all were in the same class, mixed girls and boys. What else?
Well, what did you do there, and how were you treated?
Oh, treated the same as anyone else. No one was special. It was kind of a hard life. The word love was never announced. I never heard that word. And there were frequent disagreements among the boys because of the supervision we had. We had nuns overseeing us, the same nuns every day, morning, noon, and night. And our education mostly was religious. That means we had to go to Mass every day and twice on Sunday. I became an altar boy at a young age, so I didn't mind it too much. And I volunteered to serve many masses and services as I could because I got out of the orphanage for a while. During the year, for instance, at Christmas time, I used to visit my aunts and uncles for a short time, and then in the summertime I spent a week at my uncle's farm in Fayette and a week at my Uncle Andrew's store where his family lived, and we had fun. And outside of the holidays, we never left the orphanage, only maybe for a baseball game in the summer. And some of the boys never left it at all. The parents never took them away, or the relatives. they stayed there from 1 year to the next, whereas my sister and I, we got out once in a while to visit. Just shortly in the daytime, not too long. But it was a relief, relief from being there. And we got word when I was in the 7th grade that the orphanage was going to close. And we all had to leave. I didn't know where I was going, but later on I was told my old aunt and uncle, which I considered they were elderly, said we were going to stay with them. They never had any children, so my sister and I moved in the attic. They had a room for her and a bedroom for me. It was all right. We stayed there probably over a year and a half, and then we went to foster homes. I did not like the foster home where I was put, because their son was in my class at Edison Tech School, and he and I were not too friendly. And as time went on, I was more or less left to myself, except for one boy who was up at the orphanage with me. He lived he lived a block over from me, so I had at least one friend to be with. And I had odd jobs around the house. I used to wash their porch, weed their garden, and cut their grass, things like that. Their son didn't do anything. But I survived. I set pins in a bowling alley nearby for a nickel a game. Then I had a paper route and got paid whatever the money was, I forget now. And I got a job on a farm weeding and picking beans and odd jobs with other kids from different schools. And I got paid on the average of $2 a week. I used to ride my bike to the farms, back and forth. And then as I got older, I was more or less told I had to have a better job so I could pay my own way at the foster home. So I got a job in a dry cleaning plant, pressing pants. They educated me how to do it, which was not much of a challenge, but it was very hot in there, and I worked there in the summertime when there was no school. And it was hot and very humid. But I survived. I got an average $10 to $12 a week. It was the first year.
Did you ever have any friends while you were doing your jobs?
No. Well, off and on I had friends. A boy in the neighborhood the one boy that was up with me at the orphanage, he and I were friends. Then I had another friend from high school, which I used to visit once in a while after school. And then other friends here and there, not too many. And then when the war started, I was at one of my friend's houses. We were informed the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, I was 16, I believe, yeah, 15. Anyway, a lot of Edison Tech, they were all boys school, and when the war started, a lot of them left to join the service. And my friend Jerry, who lived a block away, he got drafted in the Army. So I started thinking of myself going into the service. And I couldn't wait because I did not like the foster home or the life there, really.
Yeah,
When I became 17, I quit school.
yeah, what did you feel when you heard about the war? Like, did you feel happy? Did you feel sad?
I wasn't really happy. It was an opening to a new life, I felt. And I felt it was a way out of where I lived. So I decided to quit school at age 17, and I had to get my teeth fixed because I never visited a dentist when I was in that foster home. And I had quite a few teeth. They had to be repaired. So I went down. My father was in the Marines in World War I, so I was thinking of joining the Marines too because of him. I went down there with another friend of mine, and I went down to the Marine office to enlist. We found out we were too short to get in the Marines. And I asked where the Navy recruiting office was. They told me. So I went there, passed the minor physical exam, and was told I had to get my teeth fixed. So I got a job working every day. Of course, they were war jobs. I worked at Bausch and Lomb, and I saved money to get my teeth fixed. And then I was already sworn in at the Navy. So came March of 1943, I was told I had to go into Sampson, New York for basic training. And I was relieved to get out of that foster home into a different life. And expectations on my part were going to be a lot better than what I had. When I went in the Navy, I was one of the youngest ones in my barracks. And after basic training, being I was a student, when I left civilian life, they put me in electrician training school down in Sampson. And it consisted of 4 months training as an electrician. So after that, I was assigned to a ship being built in Bremerton, Washington, a destroyer escort. And I was part of the crew of roughly 150 to 200 other men, boys, or whatever, people. And my job was as an electrician aboard ship. It was all below decks, meaning we were not topside, we were below decks at all times, operating switchboards and controls and whatever else duties we had to perform. So that was, I got aboard ship. The ship was commissioned in early December of 43. Then we went to California on a shakedown cruise, which lasted a week. And we came back and got the repairs needed. Then we shipped out overseas before New Year's of 1944. Being as I joined in March 1943, it wasn't too long afterward that I was on the ocean. I enjoyed the first few times, early times there, because it was a new life. But once, later on, after I was trained and had my duties and so on, everything became a daily routine. And we went through two minor typhoons at the time in early 1944, and different invasions of the different islands. Starting with the Marshall Islands was our first invasion. My first battle station was below deck in the aftermotor room, operating controls. Then I got assigned to topside repair party 2, which to me, I could see it was amidships. I could see what was going on in all these invasions. I could see bombings and planes and other ships, heard the bombings and so on. And I got kind of broken in that way for these invasions. And then we were told in December we were going to go to the Philippines. On the way there, we had to go through like a channel, and we got word there was something in the water that looked like a huge snake. It was the size of a telephone pole looking down into the water, and it was moving. But as we passed it, it appeared that it was almost as large as the length of our ship. And I guess our ship communicated with others behind us, because we were told it was not any identified object or anything. So anyway, under the invasion of the Philippines, we got warning of a impending typhoon. And this was December 17th on a Sunday. And we were told we had to refuel and got supplies for the emergency typhoon. The water was very rough, and there was no sun. It was just gray area, and the water was swelled up and down, and we got refueled very hard. It was very hard because of the ocean rising and so on. And then afterwards, we were on our way with the rest of the invasion fleet. We woke up December the 18th. I got off watch duty at 8 o'clock. And usually we have second breakfast at that time. There was no second breakfast. Luckily they had the first, because the water was very, very rough, and it was very dark. You could hardly see anything, hardly. So we had to go up on the gun mount deck, which was above our regular deck, and walked to the galley. I guess we got a cup of coffee and a piece of bread or something, I guess, for breakfast. Then we were told to go to our last stations that we were in and stay there. Everybody had to stay below decks because of the impending typhoon. And the news was it was a very, very terrible one from what we had heard. So sure enough, I stayed there in the after motor room, hanging on, and meantime the ship would go up and down, side to side, and as far as we know, there wasn't anybody topside except the crew up in the bridge and the officers. So there was about 5 of us in the after motor room. We hit a bad wave that put us over on our starboard side, the right side of the ship. Water came in the hatches and it hit the emergency control board and the fire started. And luckily we put it out with the fire extinguisher, but we lost power temporarily for just a few minutes. And that roll of our ship, I had jumped up and had grabbed the beam that was in the center, and my legs were straight out to the side. None of us ever thought we were going to come back without sinking, but we did. We came back and we managed to stay there until it was, I'd say it was after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Meanwhile, there was 4 people in the after cruise compartment that decided to go topside. They went topside just as that wave hit, and nobody ever saw them again. They were lost at sea. So when we got topside, after the all clear was sounded, we looked, and the port side, all the depth charge racks, which were pretty huge and welded down, were clear, torn off. The cable, the stanchions holding the cable up as you walk to grab onto the cable, that was all wiped out. Part of the rockets from the front of the bow of the ship were torn away. So we were all surprised how they could lose these depth charges and the racks they were in, because there was quite a few. So the next day orders was to put into a harbor somewhere to get our missing parts replaced, and it took probably a day or longer to get all that done. Then we continued on the invasion of the Philippines, which eventually we, United States, took back the Philippine Islands. That was more or less the turning point of the war, I guess. And it was quite an experience. The typhoon, as I said, we had 2 minor ones before, so we got used to the rolling and the regimentation of the ship, how it reacted. So we were pretty secure afterwards. and proud that we had survived it. Then we were in the invasion of Iwo Jima and Okinawa and so on. And then it was announced in September the war was over. After we heard about the atomic bombs being dropped, unknown to us, we didn't know what these bombs were. I, in my mind, figured they were huge bombs from what the description was. And for the Americans, it was a relief that it made the Japanese surrender then. Then we were told we had to go on duty in the Yellow Sea, or China Sea, whatever you wanted to call it, in an area to, there was plenty of mines there and other things we had to look into. Us in the aircraft carrier that we were always more or less guarding on patrol with. And we came across one morning of a body in the water. So as we went to it, it was during morning chow. And they ordered our speed to decrease, and they threw a grappling hook at this body to see what it was. And it opened up the body, and the stench was terrible. Well, they discovered it was the Jap, but meanwhile the air intake of the fans on our ship was blowing the air down below where we ate. And again, I was on second chow, and we were having French toast. Because of the smell, nobody went down there but me. And when I see all that French toast, being always hungry, why, I had more than I wanted the French toast that morning because nobody else came down to eat it. I don't know, that was, till then, the largest meal I ever had in the service. And then as we went on, the smell had left, and things seemed to be back to normal. We shot a couple of mines, we exploded them by our gunnery did it. Then we were ordered back to the States. And I didn't know what I was going to do when I got back to civilian life, because I was a student. I had no job. I didn't know what I was going to do. So we got there in October, early October, and we spent, the crew got separated, partly left to go home in late October, and then part of the crew left in November. And I didn't want to go back home because there was nothing here for me, so I asked, and I got to stay on till we decommissioned the ship before Christmas of 1945. So I came home for 30 days. My sister wasn't there, and all my friends weren't home yet. There was nobody around, so I stayed at my old aunt and uncle's for 30 days. The weather was terrible cold after being in the Pacific all these years. And actually, I couldn't wait till my 30 days was up. Then I found out that electrician mates, which I was a third-class electrician, and the motor machinist mates their rates were frozen. You got discharged by your point system. And the points included your age and time in the service and so on. I was scheduled to be discharged January the 3rd of 1946 at Sampson. But my orders were to be sent to California for more Navy duty. So I waited a couple of weeks in California. Then I was assigned to an oil tanker which was being decommissioned in San Francisco Bay, which was a break for me because my ex-crew people that I have seen off and on in Frisco, kept in touch with them. They got assigned to ships that went overseas again. But I was assigned to the ship in Frisco Bay, decommissioning the tanker. Excuse me. And I wasn't eligible for discharge until March of 1946. That was the earliest date that you could get discharged. So I requested to be discharged on the West Coast, up in Seattle where my ship was built. And my best friend, he was up in, assigned to duty up in Seattle on a tugboat. And I contacted him, and he wasn't ready for discharge yet. So we had planned to go to his home in Portland, Oregon to possibly start a appliance store and repair appliances, because he was an electrician like me, and being as I had no ties at home here, it was my decision. But then my sister was due to come home, and she was expecting their first baby. So I thought, being my friend was still in the service, I'd come home and wait till he was discharged and then start over again. Meanwhile, I stayed at my sister's. They had bought a house for another year, and I wrote to my friend in Seattle about starting the appliance store. I never got an answer, never replied, so I stayed home. In the meantime, I got a job at Kodak, working on the drill press, which was a no-brainer. And the person in the secondary charge would come out and set up the machine, bring the parts, and I would operate the drill press, work it up and down for 8 hours or whatever time necessary to do that work. I was there a couple of weeks, maybe 3, and I happened to see an old schoolmate of mine at lunchtime one day, and he told me he was working at Kodak up above the floor I was on, and says they needed people up there to work. They were short-handed, and they were getting $1 an hour. I was making 85 cents an hour, which wasn't too bad then. And I went back during my lunch hour, and I see the man in charge on my floor, and I asked for a transfer. And he said, "We don't transfer out of here, we keep you." So I says, "Well, I quit, I can't stay here." So before that, I had an hour for lunch every day, so I used to walk around downtown, and I happened to come across a sign on Water Street that says T.H. Green Electrical Contractors. So I didn't know what that meant, but I went in there and found and asked and told them I was an electrician in the Navy. How could I continue on? The man there told me to apply at the union office, which was nearby. Apply as an apprentice. You serve as an apprentice for 5 years, going to night school. Then you would pass the exam and come out as a journeyman wireman. So, the day that I quit Kodak, I got a card informing me to start Monday morning at this contractor shop as an apprentice. So there I met my friend Tom Cook. He and I started the same day, and he and I spent 5 years together in the same shop, different jobs of course, and I ended up with him being my best man in my plans. During the course of the 5 years, I met my future wife. At a bowling alley, believe it or not. Her and the mother were bowling, and we were nearby in the alley, about 4 or 5 of us or whatever, and we're keeping score for them. So that's when I decided to marry my wife. Even though she was younger, it was beside the point. And then after a few years, I got engaged, married Caroline, got lucky and got a house on Ladder Road, the last house in this section to be built. And I got a GI loan, moved in, and we started our family. And I continued working as an apprentice. I became a journeyman wireman, which helped out financially quite a bit. I got several jobs nearby, like in Russell Station being built, and I was there for building the 3 units, which took over 3 years, which was nearby where I lived. And it was good work. Work was pretty good for a few years. Meantime, I had several children and enjoyed life. And because of my feelings of the union, I continued on and became an officer in the union and helped pass the rules and make sure we had, when we joined, there were no benefits. We got health insurance, we got a vacation plan, we got a holiday plan, we got sick benefits, then we got retirement benefits we worked for. All this in the course of a few years, which today we enjoy the benefits of it. And after much struggling and working out of town, 3 minutes.
30 minutes left. 30 minutes left.
Oh, 30 minutes. Oh, sorry, Nathan.
There's no other way I can tell you.
In the meantime, work had slowed down.
Fine.
Work had slowed down, and I had to go out of town to work wherever it was possible to maintain paying the bills and helping Caroline bringing up the family and so on. It was a tough job with 7 children. I worked in New York City, worked in Pennsylvania, Niagara Falls, Buffalo, Oswego, to maintain my benefits and help pay the bills. Caroline, meanwhile, gave piano lessons and went out cleaning houses to help out, paying our bills. And it worked out fine. We had struggling days ahead of us, but we survived. And unknowingly to us, our children were progressing very good in school. Bonnie had many times became a clarinet player for the high school band and orchestra. She progressed enough to go to Eastman College of Music and proceeded on. And none of my sons wanted to join the union and become an electrician like I was, I guess because it was kind of a tough life working outside and inside and unsure of the future. But anyway, we all stuck together, worked hard. They had odd jobs as they grew up. One of the hardest jobs I had growing up was working in the dry cleaning plant. Pressing pants was not a very technical job, but I had to make sure all the wrinkles were out of the pants and so on. And the pay wasn't very good. I probably got $10 to $12 a week, but it was enough to pay my room and board. And I didn't know what the future was going to be, but because of the war, it had got me out of this rut that I was in, and I had a future. I had planned to join the Navy and stay in there for many years and retire from there, being as I had no home ties anywhere. It was the thought. But after my time in the service, my mind changed and my plans changed because it was not a good future being alone in the service with temporary friends and being moved around. Although life wasn't all that bad. And after I got out, I had no thoughts of ever going in the military again. But for the opportunities that I had to join the union to become an electrician, that was a future for me. And I made the best of it as I could. Sometimes I thought about moving out of the city and going elsewhere for better future here or there, but it was not to be, so I stayed where I was and am satisfied. Everything worked out for the best in spite of sickness and minor obstructions and so on. We survived. And thank God for our good health while I was growing up. In the meantime, when I was in the 6th grade, I had gotten a stomach ache. Didn't know what it was. I was at the orphanage yet, and I complained to the nun. This was in the evening time. They didn't know what it was, neither did I. So in the morning, I still had it. They gave me castor oil. And castor oil was one of the worst things they could have given me. So after that, I threw up and the pain got worse and worse. Finally, they got a doctor for me, and I went up to where the nurse's room was, doctor came and told everybody that I had a ruptured appendix, which I didn't know what it was then. I was only going on 11 years old, or at 11. This was in December. They took me to the hospital and I had an emergency operation, and I darn near died there. I didn't know what appendicitis was. Then after a while, as I was getting better, they told me I had to have a second operation, which I had, and I survived that. And later on, more time involved, as I was getting better, they told me I had to have a third operation because of infections settling in. And in those days, the care in the hospital was just above minor. So I thought, I don't know what to expect in the hospitals. They used to rip the bandages off and stick needles in my legs and arms and chest. I didn't know what was happening. So after the third operation, it was into the following year, and it was getting towards Easter, so I was out from December until April. No school. I was sent to my aunt's again to recover for a couple of weeks. Then I went back to the orphanage, and things were more or less normal again. It seemed like. Then I found out that I almost had died the first time, and the second and third. The priest told me that they had to give me the last rites of the church, which is a long story about it and everything, but I survived. And finally, after many months, I was normal again, and was glad it was all over. Although I was very weak, I had to rebuild my body up again to what I was almost before I went in the hospital. And then we heard the rumors about closing of the orphanage. And we were all concerned because some people, some boys, they had no relatives, and those who did not have any place to go were going to go to another orphanage called St. Mary's. I had no idea where I was going till the last minute almost, and they told me my old Aunt Mary and my Uncle Bill were going to take us in. So that's where we went. Life there was kind of difficult because of their age, between their age and ours. They weren't used to kids and we weren't used to people. While I was in the orphanage, we never heard the word love. I never heard the word love until actually before I got married. Because there was never said. The only time I had any love shown was after an operation. A nurse named Dolores Denzel was kind and give me the mother attention and that was about it. But outside of just having a roof over my head, it was about all the care that was necessary to go on in life. And as I grew up, I got to hate everything about Rochester, the climate and conditions of growing up in a non-secure atmosphere. No help from school or any place to guide me or anything. Even though I went once or twice to the boys' guidance in high school, there were no help. I guess they didn't know what an orphan was. And, but anyway, I persevered and retired to a happy life.
You still got 15 minutes.
15 minutes?
15.
A happy life which I enjoy as a retired person, enjoying not to have to be anywhere at a certain time anymore, and my obligations to work had left me, and then Caroline and I joined an old-timers softball league, which was very helpful in our makeup of duties. We knew we had to be there certain days of the week, and it was right on schedule. We played there, even though I wasn't very good at it. Caroline was just about as good or maybe better than me. And nonetheless, one year she became manager of the team, and we had different men, and she, being the manager, could place us previous to the ball game the next day of different positions. And it worked out fine because we got to be in first place, and we were playing for the championship of the league, of our league then. And it so happened that some of these players were very, very good, and they helped our team very good, very much. And we got to play in the finals. So we were tied for first place. And we had to win that game to win the championship. So we did it. At the last minute, I was the last man at bat. We had a person on second base, and I was the last man up. And I hit the ball between the legs of the third baseman, and they gave this man who was on second a chance to come home, and I ran to first, so we won the championship, which was meaningless except to us involved. That's about all. But in the meantime, we used to travel to Montreal, we used to travel to Canada to play a Canadian team. And every year we would go and play 2 or 3 games there. Then the following year they would come down here and play games against us for a nondescript trophy. And it was fun. It lasted a few years. Then I got sick with prostate cancer, and that led into my valve replacement in my chest, and that ended my softball playing days because of arthritis in my hands and so on. I could no longer swing a bat, so we decided to throw the towel in, Caroline and I, and we enjoyed our fun. Meantime, her mother and her Caroline's stepfather were elderly, so they wanted to live in our house, which was fine. So they stayed at our house for 2 or 3 years, I forget the exact time, and we took care of them, and we enjoyed having them there. And then it got so we could not perform the duties of taking care of him anymore, so decided to have him move into the Fairport Baptist home, which might have been a bad deal or a good deal. We never knew the outcome, but Caroline's mother had a stroke, which kind of hindered her in her future living. But meantime, her stepfather was getting older, but he was very good health. And then Caroline's mother died, and the stepfather was all alone. And then finally he died. And so
8 minutes.
So after Ralph died, he got buried in Pennsylvania. And then our house was more or less empty until Amber had her family started, and they used to visit us here a lot. And we enjoyed the grandchildren, and we went to Florida to see Peggy down there and our son John. We spent probably a week or more together. Even though the climate was nice, it was not a place I would care to move forever. So we decided to stay here on Ladder Road and perform our rest of our life in enjoyment and whatever life gave us, which was sickness sometimes. Luckily, I had insurance. We had enough insurance to carry us through. And to this day, I developed throat cancer. And after 5 operations on my throat, I continued every 3 months to have it screened. And finally, this year in August, they discovered there were no more spots on my voice box. And I had it screened again, monitored in November, and there was no more spots on it. So the doctor did not consider me cured, but considered me that I needed no more operations. As far as changing my life, I don't think there's anything I would do to change my life except pay more attention to my family and help them decide to make different decisions for them as to regards of occupation and life, which I never had any lessons how to be a father, or Caroline any lessons how to be a mother, but I think we did pretty good. And if I were to choose another life of my own, I would never consider anything different. Maybe educate myself more, because later in life I became president of the union for 12 years, and because of my beliefs in the union and that's what kept me going to be an active member of the union. And excuse me. And finally, after 12 years as the president, I decided that I had enough and give somebody else a chance. And I decided to taper off and not go to many more meetings as I used to, because every 2 months Friday was too much. And this year I got my 65-year pin in the union, which I was very proud of, and hope to make 70 years. It's about all I could do is hope. And Caroline and I enjoyed a nice retirement life. And it's about all we can say, except for the love of our family and the grandchildren and great-grandchildren. What expectations lie ahead, we don't know, but we know it's going to be for the better. After I got out of the Navy, I got married, had a family and that, and I worked as an electrician, and sometimes the work was slow. So at one period of time, the kids were growing up, and I got a job as a night watchman in a new housing subdivision in Greece. And the policeman hired me to work like from dark until about midnight, several nights a week, because some people were coming and damaging these houses that were being built and stealing material and so on. So my job as a watchman, I would stay, and if I seen anything, I would chase them out of there, out of the area. So one night, I was up in that road in Vintage Lane. They call it Vintage Lane afterwards. I'm sitting there in the driveway facing north, and I had a coffee full of a thermos full of coffee and a couple of cigars, and the radio on, off and on. And then I'm sitting there and looking. It was dark, of course, and I seen something like a great big basketball come up from the north. Come up and it stopped, and it was orange, and I watched it. And as I'm watching it, another one came up on the right side of it. So I looked at that one, and that did the same thing. When that come up, they were both about the same height in the air. So I kept looking at that one that come up last. Meantime, the first one, I don't know where it went, but I'm watching the last one, and then it took off, still orange lights, whatever it was, going towards the northwest. And the sky was cloudy that night, but I could still see it, and the light went as far as I could see, just a little pinpoint of light, and I kept looking at it, and it had gone behind the clouds way up there, and then I seen just a little pinpoint light still going up, still rising, and then that was the end of it. And there was nobody around me that I could say, did you see that? What was it? Nobody. So I worked until about 10 o'clock or later, and then came home and told my wife and kids who were up, any of them that were up, about that incident of the UFO, whatever it was. And then a couple of days later, it was in the paper that President Carter saw lights where he was in the White House or Georgia or wherever he was at that time. He saw orange lights also over the ocean area in the sky. So that's the only story that I got. But I do know that what I saw was true, and people afterwards said it was probably helicopters, but helicopters don't go that fast traveling. And there was no sound, there was nothing, just moving light. And as I said, the first light that I saw, I don't know what happened to it, whether it went north or what, I have no idea. But that's the end of the story of that. We were in the island called Ulithi, where a lot of our ships go between invasions and everything, and get supplies. Anyway, we got a call about 8 o'clock at night to go out to a spot in the ocean that two ships had collided. So we got underway and took off, and we got there at approximately 2 o'clock in the morning, dark as everything. The only light that there was there at that time was a fire aboard the this cargo transport ship. And you could see it for many, many miles. So as we drew near, there was another ship that had rammed it. It was a tanker, and they had gone off, sitting somewhere. And we were told we had to go aboard the burning ship and try and put the fire out. So being in the repair party 2, which was topside, station topside, we were assigned to the duty. So we got 3 pumps and our crew, 2 men to each pump. And this is the photograph of our ship. And the cargo ship was sinking. And the railing was about this height. So we had to lower these pumps down there. First they unrolled a metal ladder, so some of the men went down aboard that ship, and it was burning, and we lowered the pumps, and then we all went down. The rest of us went down. There was 2 men to each pump, and we told to start our pumps. Well, at the stern of the ship, there was jeeps, different equipment there that you could just about see, and men were laying there, and they were burnt. Only we didn't know it at that time. So my partner and I, Helms, you have to start like a lawnmower. You pull the cord, and then the thing starts, and then the pump comes up from the ocean to the hose, and we were playing it on the ship that was burning. So every time I tried to start it, my arm would hit something like a tree branch. I didn't realize it at the time, but there were no trees. But then my arm went back again, and I looked, and there was a burnt body. You could see the body bubbling. The person that was there was burnt, and my partner and I stared at it for a few seconds, I guess, and looked at it. We were amazed to see it. It's the first time I ever saw one. Anyway, we got the pump going, and we started spraying the fire where it was amidship and in the back, the stern. And the more we did, there was a hatch, which is a door, locked door, and we were told, somebody says, open that hatch and shoot the water in there. So we got the hatch open, and it was piled high with bodies. So we quickly shut it again. We kept on spraying. In the meantime, there were duffel bags there, or sea bags or whatever, and one of our officers hollered to tie them up, and the crew would bring them up to our ship for identification purposes. So in the meantime, some of us kept spraying, and some tied up the duffel bags and pulled them up. And then, I don't know how long after, it was quite a while after, we got orders that a Navy fire ship was on its way, that we were to secure, stop our stuff, and they were put everything back aboard our ship, all the pumps and the hoses, So I was the last man tying up these pumps and everything. Well, the other crew mounted that metal ladder. The metal ladder came down and the bottom of it was in the burning ship part. And so and our ship being there in the ocean was rocking like this, back and forth, back and forth. And these guys, the other sailors, were on the ladder and the ladder was swinging back and forth. And it looked like they really had to hang on for life because it was quite a distance from the burning ship to our ship in the open ocean below you. You couldn't see anything. We had one searchlight on shining down, and that was all. So I got all the other pumps and tied them on one at a time, and they hauled them up. One at a time, and threw the rope down. I got the last one on, they pulled it up. And I decided rather than go up that ladder, which was swinging like this between both ships, I thought, geez, if I hang on, I might fall off that. So I watched our ship rock towards the burning ship like that, rocking. I thought, well, if I stood on the railing, stood on that, it was wide, about that wide, and I said, I'll stand there, and when my ship rocks back, I'll jump up and grab the, what they call lifeline aboard it. So I waited, sure enough, the ship rocked, and I timed it to jump. I missed. I didn't grab anything but what they call a waterway. A waterway is on the edge of the ship and top side. The excess water would go in there like a drain and drain towards the bow and then go off rather than get the whole side of the ship wet. I grabbed that and hung on. In the meantime, we were getting underway because that other fire ship was coming and everybody was going to their station and starting engines or whatever. I could hear the noise and I'm hollering up to anybody, nobody could hear me. Finally, as I'm hanging there, looking up, this gunner's mate came by, named Tom somebody. He seen me hollering. He reached down, got me by my t-shirt and dungarees and pulled me up. And then I went over the lifeline and I laid there for a few seconds. In the meantime, we had to prepare to get underway, and I had to go to the after motor room for my underway duty, sea duty. So as I got up, he asked me what happened. I told him, I says, I went to grab the lifeline, which is a series of ropes there. I missed. I didn't time it. The ropes were up here and I was hanging here. He says, you're lucky, you're lucky. Anyway, we got back to where we were at the island and it was just about dawn. And I was so scared from what I went through that I just was telling some friends of mine what happened, and I was just kneeling there on the deck trying to get myself together afterwards. And that was the experience of the ship, fire aboard the ship. And it's something I'll never forget. Because if I didn't catch that, I would have dropped in the ocean. Nobody would ever knew, would have missed me, because everybody on our ship was getting ready to get underway. So to me, that was a miracle. And then you remember me telling you about the storm where we had the depth charge racks taken away? Well, this is the view of our ship underway in the ocean, and back here you'll see the depth charge racks all back here. They were very, very heavy. They were welded down to our ship. And then alongside her is the lifeline on stanchions. Well, like I said, after the storm, we looked up on this side of the ship. All the depth charge racks were gone. The lifeline and the stanchions were gone. And the battery locker, which is here, that was gone. And the rockets up here, which were called hedgehogs, part of those were gone. They just tore away with the force of the water and wind. So that's it.
Can you show?
What that mean?
Can you show the picture?
Oh,
Just a second. Really.
there's the picture.
Thank you.
It's our ship out to sea. Now here is a photograph of our ship in Puget Sound with the camouflage painting. This is the Atlantic Ocean painting, camouflage painting. It looks like icebergs and snow, whatever you can make of it. That was our original painting of our ship. And then did you get it? And then when we went to go overseas, we had to go up towards Alaska to get ammunition and that, and we got a new paint job. It was all dark gray. It was the Navy colors for the Pacific Ocean. We were assigned to the Pacific Ocean then. It was our duty for the rest of the war. And I had the photographs. I can't find them. And that's about it. And then that was in the summertime. I forget what month that burning ship was there. But the next day in the island, in Ulithi, we saw the tanker come in, the tanker that had rammed that cargo ship, and the bow was up in the air 5 to 8 feet up from damage, and it was slowly coming into the harbor where we were. And that was the one that we saw the night before. They had rammed it, that cargo ship and passenger. And I don't know how many men were killed, but you could smell it that night. You could smell the bodies burning. You could see the body laying there. The searchlight was on it, and you could see the bubbling of the inside and the bones. It was scary. It's the first time I ever saw anything like that in my life. But I'll never forget it. It's just like I saw it last night. And that's the story of the burning ship and how I was saved by one man pulled me up off over the side of the ship. And that's the end of the story.
Okay, thank you
Okay.
very much for
You're welcome, Nathan.
telling me about your life.
Did you see the picture of the ships? See, that was the one in Bremerton, Washington, Seattle, where
Okay.
it was built, that ship was. And this is our ship in the middle of the ocean somewhere.
Hmm.
Same ship.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mhm.